Hello, everybody. So apparently you're going to have a bit more of me than initially planned because you're going to have none of the person that was supposed to talk after me. Sorry for that in advance. So let's assume that you are a young developer or something, and that you got into this business with a friend of yours that told you, look, we're going to make applications for people and they're going to pay us. And it's going to be cool, we're going to get rich. And assume that somebody else has done the job of convincing clients that they need to buy from you or do some applications, and now you have to execute it. And you're the developer, you have to execute it. And you have the choice of developing it from scratch, because you're a developer, you can always reinvent the wheel, or you have the choice of using some existing bricks. And these existing bricks can come in different shapes. They can be just libraries that other people have wrote, or they can be fully fledged systems. I want to talk to you about XWiki as a collaborative applications development platform. So let's make it a little bit more precise. Not just any application. There are some applications that have, the group of applications that can be handled by XWiki have some specific characteristics. They are web applications, so it's going to be in the browser. Don't imagine mobile applications. They're going to be centered around content, so it's going to be about some sort of content that some people will want to publish through this application or work with it. And they could be collaborative. They don't have to, but if they are, then it's better. Why? What is XWiki? So before I tell you why you want to do it with XWiki, we better mention what it is. Ludovic has talked about XWiki a little bit before. So XWiki is an enterprise wiki engine. I put wiki in between quotes because you're going to see later it's not that much about wiki than it is about collaborative applications in general, where you can have some user-defined structured content, so you can specify that. And it has scripting and APIs that are available to the, let's say, developers or administrators. So all these things put together make it more like an applications platform rather than a wiki. But keep in mind all through this presentation that it is actually runnable software. It's a software that runs. It's not a library. So now you have to do the job of creating this application for your client that is centered around content and collaborative and all that stuff. And you could use a couple of bits and pieces of XWiki to make your life easier. One of the things that XWiki has is that everything that it does is collaborative by default. So you're going to have multiple users that are going to be involved in everything that happens on the wiki. You're going to have versioning, and every resource on the wiki is actually a page that will have versioning and that will have history. So these things are built in the tool. So if your application that you need to build for these clients that you have needs to track a little bit the changes, then all this is built in, then you can kind of difficultly get rid of it. Once you get used to having history for everything, it's going to be really, really tough to get unused. For example, I find it really frustrating when I rarely do, but I do sometimes do some interventions like on a file system, on a server, on a configuration file, and then I realize that something has changed in this configuration file and I don't have the history of who has done it and at what point and why. While on the wiki you have all that on a wiki-like engine. The second brick that you want to use or that you will like to use is the fact that you can have regular text, regular pages like in a wiki, normal wiki, for example, an article that just contains text, but it can also have structured data. And this structured data will be defined by you really easily. Like if you really don't want to code, you can do it in the browser with drag and drop. But let's assume you want to code because you're a developer. So you can have types of metadata that are associated to pages. You can have short text, long text, numbers, dates, lists of users, multiple select lists, single select lists. So also all sorts of type of data that you might imagine that you would want your application or the data of your application to have. And what's really, it's not this, is next slide, sorry. What's really interesting is that the definitions of the metadata that are associated to the pages, they are also pages on the wiki. So they also have history in all these things. Now, you don't have to define structures for the pages. You can also use the pages as just plain text content. So if you manage to think about your application that you need to build, if you manage to think about it in terms of pages that have text and structured metadata associated to it, you have already entered the XWiki framework if you want, and you're going to have all sorts of benefits that will come from this. The first benefit is that the CRUD lifecycle of data, the create, retrieve, update, delete, is already happening. You don't have to work for it. Once you have defined structured data that is associated to the pages, you will have form editing for those pages. People will be able to click edit, fill in the data in the form, and then hit save. And you won't have to write one line of code for that because it's all built in the system. And it's working out of the box. And this can be quite interesting. Like I put here a screenshot of what can happen if you structure your page. You see you have this, you can choose an element in a list. You can pick a date and all of these things. And you don't have to worry about finding a library that works, that does this job, and then integrating it in your application and so on. It's all happening. Also, forgot to mention, by default for editing text, there's the CK editor, WYSIWYG editor, which is quite powerful, rich text editor, so you don't have to bother about integrating that either, because otherwise you'd have to kind of figure it out. Then, because we're talking about runnable software, it's not just components or just libraries, you already have the concept of users and access rights that is already running from day zero in your application that you are building. You have users. Users can be grouped by roles, and you can define access rights on the content, on the data that you have structured in your application. So when you structure the data of your application, when you structure it as wiki pages that are organized in a tree and with metadata associated to it, this tree will also define how you will be able to define the access rights on that data. But it's already built in the tool. It's the same. If you want to do this without coding one line, you can do configuration of access rights and really complicated ones without writing one line of code, which can be quite neat. Like you can get your application started really fast. The rights in XWiki, they kind of, the atomic unit of content that can be controlled by access rights is a page. So page, which means plain text and metadata that can be associated to this page. But if you want to do that finer grain, you can like split your stuff in multiple pages, for example, if you want to have finer grained rights. So there's going to be some sort of a thinking that you're going to have to do beforehand in order to be able to have that. But you have the users and you have the groups. And the fact that the platform already handles users for you, authentication and all that, it's already a big benefit. You don't have to code that. It just happens, it just exists in the tool. And we'll see later the benefits of the fact that you have it. Then you have a search, because you have your application, you have your application that revolves around people creating content and collaborating around content, and people will want to search for that content. They will want to, oh, I want a search box here. If you need to code that, you can use some existing libraries. There are some tools that you can integrate, but in XWiki you already have it. Like, when you structure your data as pages, the search is already there, and the search engine is already indexing all the data that you put in there. Actually, if you don't want the search, you need to deactivate it, because otherwise it's just there, and people will be able to search for stuff. Most of the times you will want to hide stuff from people. That's quite unusual, but it happens because you're going to have all sorts of configuration documents and configuration files, and people are going to be able to find that, and they're not going to know, like, why am I seeing this, and so on. So search is already there. It's based on Solr, so it's really powerful. You have faceted search, and the structured data appears by default in the, you can use the structured data easily in the search facets, like in the advanced filtering for the search. It's already there. It's running from day zero. Also forgot to mention, it's not that important that deserves its own slide, but it's really important. XWiki is language aware. You can tell to the wiki, okay, this wiki is in French, or this wiki is in German, and all the content that will be created will be tagged with that language, and it will be taken into account when you're going to do the Solr search. And this is really important because people want to be able to search properly in their language. Also, by default, you have a responsive, customizable UI. So you have the default UI of XWiki, which you have seen in the screenshots until now, which is nice, really cool, but it doesn't contain your client's logo, and it doesn't contain your client's colors and stuff like that. However, it is responsive. So you have an application that is already responsive out of the box. You don't have to do anything for it. And in the administration section of XWiki, you can easily choose the colors, you can choose a different logo and things like that. So you can do some basic look and feel without actually touching any line of programming or code or whatever, just by clicking. But you can also go further if you want to do more. So that's also in your application, because people usually want that. You also have notifications by default on all the content that is in the wiki. So when your content will be wiki pages, you're going to have notifications on that, which also uses atomic element the page, when a page changes or is created or things like that. And you can see these notifications in the UI of the wiki. There's a little bell, and you see what's happening, and you can also receive them by mail. I think it's a little bit harder to turn them off. No, you can turn them off, than to have them on. But as soon as you have content in the wiki, your users will have this feature by default, and they can configure it in their profiles. So that's also, you also have that if you want. You also have data import if you want. Your client tells you, okay, beautiful application, content and stuff, but all my data is in Office files. How am I going to get that in your system, in your application that you just created? You have tools to do that in XWiki. So we have tools to import the data from Office and also from CSV files or Excel files, because people might have their structured data in an Excel file. And then people tell you, okay, great, I'm working with all these people I'm creating, but I would like to export them in PDF. You also have that in XWiki. So export in ODT formats or PDF formats is a click away. So you also have this feature that will be part of your application out of the box. You don't have to code for it. Well, unless you want it really a bit more complicated. You also have, I might need to mention, because it might be important for some of you, you also have REST APIs that are there by default. It's harder to turn them off than to have them on, meaning that your data is already accessible through REST APIs if you're building it on XWiki. As I have been mentioning already a couple of times, this is running since day 0. So XWiki is a runnable software. It's not bits and pieces that you have to connect together or things like that. It's running from day 0, and all these features that I have mentioned, they will be present in your application in one form or another. Maybe it's not going to be the best form that you want, but you're going to have that in a form. For example, the search, it might not be finding things or using the proper criteria, but you're going to have a basic plain text search that will be available in your application. And you can build all this incrementally, starting with a base version. So the only operation that you absolutely have to do is to structure your data. Like to think about how will I structure my data and how will I put it in the wiki. Also, XWiki has some extensions. So you can, XWiki, the engine, the platform, you can add some extensions to it. There's a store online with the extensions contributed by people and things like that. The advantage of that is that you can get some stuff for free. For example, the authenticators. The authenticators is really cool because you have the user system of XWiki, and if you use that user system, you can connect that with an authenticator from the extension store, and you can have OpenID authentication in your wiki. Out of the box. You don't have to code for it. You just install one thing, you configure it, you put some URLs and stuff, and it works. And you can also install additional applications to complete the ecosystem. Like you have built some stuff for data, but your client also wants a blog in the application. You just click a button, you install the blog application, and you also have a blog. And you can also customize everything. Like the way that I mentioned these features is more like what you can get without coding anything, like just clicking stuff. But if you want to code, you can code. And if you've seen the presentation of Ludovic from 40 minutes ago or so, you have seen that you've seen that you can script stuff, you can use external libraries, you can integrate all sorts of things in XWiki and like make it go really further. For example, if you don't like the forms that XWiki will create by default for you, you can actually put your own JavaScript, your own CSS, your own HTML, and you like make it exactly the way you want it. So sky is the limit. You can go all the way. And I have forgot I had this slide. I thought that was it. You also have the usual project lifecycle, because by now you are probably thinking, yeah, it's great, but then my stuff is going to be in the wiki, and I cannot work with other people. We cannot use the usual build system and things like that. Actually, everything that you do in the wiki, you can serialize it as XML. Then it becomes a source file, if you want, that you can put in it becomes an actual source file that you can put in a SCM source source Git. In a Git, yeah, you can put that in a Git. And you can build it with Maven modules that are available, and then it creates the deliverables. And you also have applications to actually commit directly from the wiki without going through the serialization manner. So you can have your usual project development lifecycle with no problem. And it's easy to upgrade. I forgot I had this slide. So basically, you can actually pump up a little bit your application just by upgrading the underlying platform. Imagine that you are actually building this on top of XWiki, and 1 year later, XWiki has evolved, or I don't know, we switched to Bootstrap 5, and it's like, oh, I would really love Bootstrap 5. You just upgrade the underlying platform. Backwards compatibility is really a core value of XWiki, so when you develop stuff on top of XWiki, XWiki will be backwards compatible, so old stuff will run on the new stuff. And you can actually get a lot of new things and fresh things for free. With you all the way, as in XWiki is nice, is good for all the phases of development of this application. It's easy to prototype because it's running from day zero, as I said. You just install it, you have something already. During the development, it allows you to work incrementally, like you can build some bits and then the others are default, and as you build them, you make them, they're part of your application. And during the maintenance phase, so the phase after the deployment of your project, during the maintenance phase, you can easily do upgrades and also do nice, easy interventions directly from the browser if you need to fix stuff. A couple of examples, maybe. So we doesn't look at all like the default UI of XWiki and things like that. So we did nodemash.gouv.fr, which is a website where people go to vote for how their administrative procedures how it worked, their online administrative procedures. Like they had to declare the birth of a kid online, and how did that happen for them. And so this is a customized, nice web page with a search that is default in XWiki. This is a form that is not at all standard in XWiki. We have done a lot of work to make this form with smileys and stuff like that. So this is possible. It's possible to go this far. And then we used some extension to make these graphs. We didn't code them. We just installed some stuff, and it worked. And this is a demo of the search, which is default in XWiki. We just added a couple of lines of CSS to make it look a little bit sexier. And we have this application. We have worked for it, but it was done easily by reusing components. There's also an example in the wild, VCAPCOM, which is a repository of components for VCalc and documentation for VCalc, as far as I understood. So it's also very nicely... For formula. There's...
Like mathematical formulas.
Yeah. There's multiple types of stuff. So they're using some structured data because they have types for the resources that are available on you could consider it a wiki. I could look at their history, of the pages, and I could see that they have customized, for example, they put the rating in the search. They use the plugin of XWiki, which allows you to rate pages, and they included that rating as a criteria in the search. And that's actually really easy to do. Don't have to code for it. And also another nice example of a project that looks like an application that could have been done from zero, but is not. It's based on XWiki. It's the dictionary of the Switzerland.
Any Swiss in the room?
Any Swiss in the room? No. It's
so if you wonder about the 3 names, it's because it's in the 3 languages.
It's in 3 languages, yeah. So it's a sort of a Wikipedia of Switzerland, but a private one made by the state. It's like a state institution that is handling and it's publishing the history of Switzerland. And there's this gorgeous homepage, and then they have criteria that metadata that is associated to pages that allows you to search for stuff and so on. So apparently time is up. I thought it was too much, but apparently it's not.
10 minutes. What?
Okay.
Okay, because
there is nobody after.
Great.
You can do the live demo now.
I can do in 10 minutes. Okay. Let's go.
HLS, for example. And
Yeah, we can look at. Do I have enough internet to do the live demo of HLS? Second. I'm going to put it in French because there's no English version and I don't actually understand German. Sorry. So this is a beta version and it looks a lot like a regular encyclopedia, like a regular Wikipedia because it has text, but it's actually very structured and you can see the structure. For example, if you are picking a person, already when you navigate the list of data, you have these this navigation here. For example, you can group by people, and then you can choose a category, like people in the politics after 1848, and you can choose a subcategory and so on. And this is possible because the data is actually structured, and you also have different criteria of categories. You have the place where they're acting, the time, and the gender of the people, and you can do all this filtering because the data is structured in the wiki, and you can actually take advantage of all the elements of XWiki. So this is actually, there's a search here. This is actually the default XWiki search. It's just really nicely customized. So these are the search filters that I have shown you just before. They were gray. Now they're not gray anymore. And this is the actual, they hit the button of showing all the occurrences. By default in XWiki, when you do a search, you see a couple of highlights of the search results in the page, and you can hit a button to see more. But here they have shown the highlights by default, and you don't see the button for more. So this is the default XWiki search that is running on this data. You can also see here the XWiki feature of multi-language, of multiple languages. What else is there in here that is really interesting? All this UI is really...
You can click on an article, like with a photo. I think Geneva had one, yeah?
Oh, now we're in Italy.
Yeah. And if you click on an image, you have some specific features. Like table of content, you can show. Look, you have the table of content at the top left here.
Right here?
Yeah, you can click on it.
Yeah, this is just... So this is a regular table of contents of the page. Somebody has worked with it and displayed it somewhere else. So there's a lot of JavaScript and CSS that goes into having it look like this. So somebody has really put a lot of work in it. But it's possible to do it, and it's possible to keep all the features of XWiki.
Click on an image.
And I will click on an image because the image is interesting, because there's a lot of metadata that is associated to the image. So it's not just an image, it's actually... There's metadata that was associated to it, because in this case, they have done this choice that I was mentioning at the beginning. They have done the choice of splitting article content and article multimedia in two different elements in order to be able to handle them separately. I mentioned that when I mentioned rights. Like if you want finer grained rights, you just split them. And actually, the whole content in the backend is split in multiple pieces, because on each paragraph of an article, somebody else has a rights has different rights on them. So this is a choice that you will make like when you start building your application, and from this choice you can end up in some places with your applications that can be dead ends, or there can be huge benefits depending on how you made your choice at the beginning. And I think I still have a little bit of time. I'm going to show you this website.
Any French people in the room?
Yeah, 2. Not that many. Let's look for... No, I wanted the second one. Sorry, I wanted the second one because it has nice data. So I could be actually submitting this form to give my opinion, but it would actually be registered in the system, so I'm not going to do it because I haven't modified any association. I don't have any. And this is a plugin I was mentioning. This plugin, actually, it's possible because the data is structured in a certain way, and then we just install this plugin that makes graphs, and we tell it which of the metadata of the documents that we have need to be used for the graphs. And we don't have to code the stuff. It's just, I don't know if you've shown it in your demo, Ludovic.
I showed a chart with Jira.
It's called, it's a macro that you install from the extensions, and you tell it, okay, I have my application, I have this structured data, make a graph out of this data and stuff like that. And it's just happening magically. You don't have to worry about much. Other than dealing with changing opinions of your client about what the application should be, because everybody has that problem. Please reassure me that everybody has that problem. Okay. I think I'm going to not stop here. I'm going to do some more demos. It's still French stuff, sorry, for the people that are not speaking French. So this is actually another type of application that is really adapted to building with XWiki. Is a resource center for people that work in the public administration in France to continue to do ongoing learning. And this is a resource center. So it's going to contain all sorts of types of resources. There's going to be, apparently we don't have the categories anymore. Oh, we do?
No doubt.
Here. So you have different types. You have thematic files, folders. You have official texts. You have acronyms. So in the acronyms list, you're going to have the list of all the acronyms that you might find somewhere. And you can actually go and look it up here, and it's going to have a definition. It's going to have an acronym and a definition, and all this is structured data in the wiki. You can have official texts, which are related to laws and things like that. So all the resources are basically structured by type and grouped by type, and you can access them by type. And I hope they are used in the search. I'm not sure, but I think it's using, because I remember now, it's GSA. It's GSA because they somehow didn't like our search. Yeah, sorry for that. Apparently it was not enough for them, and they plugged the Google Search appliance on the search, on this particular project, as far as I remember. You can also do that if you want. So if somebody doesn't like our Solar Search or whatever, they can plug something else. That's it. I'm going to take questions. I'm sure there's a lot of questions.
About 5 minutes per question.
Yes. Sorry.
Is it possible to, you have user groups, I guess?
Mm-hmm.
Some kind of, is it possible to allow them to edit and create pages in one category, but not in
Yeah. So as I said, the data is structured in a tree, and you can imagine like a folder system on a Unix system. You have a folder system, and you can have rights at the root of the tree that will apply to all the tree, and then you can override these rights somewhere downwards in the tree, and these rights will block the stuff that is inherited and so on. So it's really, really flexible from this point of view. But then again, the core operation is going to be the structure. When you start your project and you think about your data, you're going to have to choose a proper tree, for example, at that moment that will take into account the rights that you will want to give people. You can also do rights individually on each page, but then it's going to be a little bit harder to manage. So if you really, really want to handle each page individually and access rights for each page, you can do that. But it's just going to be tough to remember what you did and where, and it's going to become really quickly a mess.
And you can actually also check rights inside your scripts that you write. So if you make a custom interface to create something, you could actually, based on what the fields have been filled.
Yeah, the scripting API. So the scripting API that you have, and you can always use if you want. The scripting API has API to check rights. So it's.
In your forms, do you have validators?
Sorry.
When you have a form, like a question.
By default, no.
Okay.
So the question is whether there's validation in the forms.
Yeah.
By default, no, but there is a mechanism that allows you to do validation server-side first. So there's validation server-side is the one by default, which reminds me I need to refresh the tutorial about how to do that because it's a little bit oldish. But you can do that, it's server-side first, and then on the UI, I think there's some JavaScript API that you can use to do JavaScript validation. But yeah, so you can have validation. It's a feature in the core of the CRUD, of the save part of the CRUD system. Because save is going to be like the save API on the server, and the way it works is that as long as you send the data with the proper form names to the save, it's going to save it. And it contains validation in it and so on. So if you send the proper stuff, it's going to do validation and not save and send back an error saying, I couldn't save because of. And you're going to have to handle it. Other questions? Thank you.